There is something happening in the air around you right now that you have not been able to name, but you have absolutely been able to feel. It is not a single event. It is not a single headline. It is the accumulation of 100 small signals arriving in waves so close, together, that your system has barely had time to process one before the next has already installed itself in your chest and demanded a response. You feel it in the way your sleep has shifted, that restless quality at 3 in the morning when the mind begins sorting through things that were not even yours to carry. You feel it in the way a single piece of news can change the entire tone of your day before you have spoken a single word to anyone. You feel it in the way conversations that used to feel simple have taken on a new weight, as though everyone around you is managing an invisible pressure that nobody is quite aiming out loud. And there is a reason all of this is building right now. There is a reason why the weeks ahead carry a specific charge that those of you who are sensitive have already been anticipating. What is moving through your collective field in this period is not random, and it is not without meaning. And the transmission that has found you today exists for one purpose: to give you something real, something practical, something that lives in the body rather than simply in the mind, so that when the intensity of the coming weeks arrives at your door, you are standing on a foundation that cannot be shaken by volume. Stay with every word of what follows, because what arrives in the layers ahead of this message is exactly what the part of you that found this transmission already knew it needed. I am Mira, transmitted through the heart of the Pleiadian High Council, and I come to you today not with abstract encouragement, but with a living architecture, a set of inner gates that you can walk through right now in the ordinary hours of your actual life, so that the acceleration your world is entering does not sweep you along as a passive passenger, but instead reveals you as the coherent, grounded, sovereign presence you have always been at the level of your deepest truth. Because this is not the time for poetic spirituality that lives only in your best moments. This is the time for a spirituality that works when the noise is loudest, when the opinions are most competing, when the pressure to react feels most urgent, and when your nervous system is processing more simultaneous inputs than it was ever designed to hold at once. A Pleiadian High Council has been observing what is building in your collective field with a precision that is difficult to convey in linear language. And what we see is a humanity that is fundamentally ready, more ready than it has ever been in recorded history, to make a transition that has nothing to do with any single external event, and everything to do with where individual human beings choose to place their sovereign attention on an ordinary Tuesday morning. That transition is from reaction to coherence, from borrowed urgency to genuine inner signal, from the exhausting effort of keeping up with everything to the sustainable and surprisingly powerful practice of remaining deeply present with yourself while the world moves at whatever speed it chooses to move. And we begin this transmission in the only place that genuine change has ever begun, in the practical, lived, moment-by-moment experience of a single human being returning to their own center and deciding with full consciousness that this center is worth protecting. The first gate we bring to you is the one that makes every other gate possible, and we call it the noise floor reset, not because it is complicated, but because it is the most urgently needed practice for the specific conditions of your current era. Here is what is happening inside you right now, even as you receive these words. There is a layer of your awareness that is genuinely present, that is here, now, in this breath, in this moment. receiving the signal with genuine intelligence and genuine receptivity. And underneath that layer, there is a second layer that has not fully stopped processing. It is still carrying yesterday's conversation. It is still rehearsing a response to something you read 4 hours ago. It is still running a low-grade simulation of tomorrow's obligations, or next month's uncertainties, or the ongoing loop of a collective situation that you have been feeding with your attention, because stepping away from it feels somehow irresponsible. And this second layer has a name in the language of signal science. It is called the noise floor, and every system, every receiver, every instrument, every human nervous system has a noise floor, a baseline level of background activity beneath which the finer signals cannot be detected. Not because those finer signals are absent, but because the baseline noise is too high for them to register above it. Your genuine guidance, your authentic inner truth, your clear as water knowing of what is actually right for you. These are fine signals. They are always present. They have been present through every season of your life, including the seasons when you could not hear them. And the reason they become inaudible in periods like this one is not because truth has abandoned you. It is because the noise floor of your daily experience has been raised by inputs that were never filtered, by stimulation that was never discharged, and by a collective field that is running at a higher volume than your system was, designed to process without regular recalibration. This gate gives you the recalibration, and it is intentionally small, not because small is a compromise, but because small is what actually changes the nervous system. Not dramatic, one-time gestures that the mind turns into performances and then quietly abandons, but daily, unglamorous, consistent micro-practices that your body learns to trust as its new home rhythm. What you are about to receive in this first gate is deceptively simple. Do not let its simplicity deceive you into treating it as optional. The souls who apply what is given in the next few minutes will feel a measurable shift in their daily experience within 72 hours. Stay with every word. The practice of the noise floor reset requires only 90 seconds of your day. The same 90 seconds, in the same location, at the same natural pause point. Because consistency is how the body learns. And the body learning is how the nervous system changes. And the nervous system changing is how your entire relationship with the speed of your world begins to transform at its actual root rather than at the surface level, where most people keep trying to fix things. Choose your 90 seconds at a transition point that already exists in your day. The moment before your hand reaches for your phone in the morning, the pause after you park your car, the 90 seconds after you wash your hands in the middle of the day. These locations work because they are already natural pauses. The mind is not yet fully engaged with the next task, and your system is briefly available. And in that availability, you do something that is both ancient and radical in the context of a modern life, driven by constant input. You place one hand on your chest, over the center of your heart, and one hand on your belly just below the navel. You let your shoulders drop, as though you are releasing a physical weight. Because you are, you take one slow breath, genuinely slow. Slow enough that your body believes you mean it. And as you exhale, you speak one sentence inwardly, with the full weight of your sincere attention behind it. The sentence is simply this: I am here. Not as an affirmation you are trying to make true, as a statement of fact that you are helping your system remember. Because you are here, you are genuinely, physically, presently here, in this body, in this breath. in this moment. And your system, which has been traveling at the speed of the collective for hours, needs to be reminded of that fact by someone it trusts. And the only someone it trusts completely is you. If thoughts arise during your 90 seconds, allow them to move the way weather moves. You do not need to stop them, argue with them, or follow them. You simply keep your hands in place, keep your breath moving, keep your attention in the sentence. And by the third day of this practice, you will begin to notice something shifting in your ordinary life that you did not expect to shift. Your reactions will soften slightly before you have made a conscious decision to soften them. The urgency of certain inputs will feel slightly less absolute. Your body will begin to signal its yes and its no with more clarity, because the room in which it was trying to signal you has become just slightly quieter. And this is where the real gift begins to reveal itself, not in the 90 seconds themselves, but in the rest of the day that those 90 seconds have recalibrated. The noise floor reset is also addressing something extremely specific about what is building in your collective field right now, and what is going to continue building through the weeks of what your calendar calls March and into the months beyond. There is a very particular human experience that this era is amplifying, and it is the experience of being activated, of feeling your nervous system spike with the electrical charge of urgency, of importance, of now, and then treating that activation as if it were a signal from your higher knowing, rather than a physiological response to a carefully engineered stimulus. Your world has become extraordinarily sophisticated at generating physiological activation. The systems that compete for your attention have studied with considerable precision what triggers the specific neurochemical cascade that makes a human being feel that. What they are experiencing is urgently important and requires an immediate response. And this cascade, which was designed by your evolutionary biology to protect you in situations of genuine physical danger, is being triggered dozens or hundreds of times per day by inputs that have nothing to do with genuine danger and everything to do with the economics of captured attention. When this happens repeatedly without discharge, your nervous system begins to normalize a state of low-grade emergency. It begins to operate as though urgency is the natural baseline. And from that baseline, the distinction between a genuine inner signal and a collectively induced activation becomes very difficult to detect. The noise floor has risen to the point where the fine signal of your actual knowing is being drowned out by the constant background roar of collective urgency. And this, beloved ones, is precisely why this gate exists at precisely this moment, because the weeks ahead are not going to be quieter. They are going to be louder, more intense, more competing for the signature of your attention and the emotional charge of your agreement. And you deserve a daily practice that keeps your signal clean, regardless of what the collective volume is doing around you. Here is where this transmission takes a turn that many are not prepared for, but that every part of your deeper knowing has been waiting to hear. What builds in the next gate is the specific tool for the specific challenge of the coming weeks. Do not miss a single word of what follows. The second gate is what we call signal integrity in the age of stories, and it is the gate that directly addresses the environment you are about to navigate with increasing intensity, because your world is entering a season, and those of you who are sensitive have already been feeling the edge of it arriving, where the volume, the speed, and the emotional charge of incoming information is going to reach levels that are genuinely unprecedented in your recent collective experience. More narratives will compete simultaneously for your loyalty, your fear, your hope, and your outrage. More evidence will appear in fragments that carry enormous emotional weight, but lack the full context that would allow genuine understanding. More voices will speak with the absolute certainty of those who have found the complete truth, when in fact they have found a piece of it filtered through the specific emotional state they were in when they received it. And more of your friends, your family, members, your communities, and your circles will be moving through this landscape without the inner tools to distinguish between a genuine signal and a collectively amplified distortion. This is the specific environment for which this gate has been prepared, and the Pleiadian High Council is delivering its mechanics to you now, because the window in which this knowledge is most useful is not next month. It is the period you are entering right now. Signal integrity, when brought into the body rather than kept as an intellectual concept, has a very clear felt sense. A genuine signal, a real piece of truth, arriving from an authentic source, or a real piece of inner knowing arising from your genuine discernment, feels spacious in the chest. It feels like the breath can move freely. It carries a quality of steadiness, of patience, of a willingness to be examined and to hold up under examination. It does not demand that you act immediately. It does not require you to abandon your capacity for nuance in order to accept it. And it does not try to install an emotion in you as the vehicle through which it moves into your nervous system, a distorted signal, a fragment of truth, amplified by fear or outrage or artificial urgency, and delivered in a way designed to recruit your nervous system rather than inform your discernment. Feels different in the body. It feels like a tightening in the chest or the throat. It feels like a sudden heat, a spike of energy that wants to move toward action or sharing or announcement before the mind has had time to actually process what it is receiving. It feels like a contraction rather than an expansion. And as you learn to notice this distinction, not as a concept, but as a direct, reliable, body-based perception, you gain access to a form of freedom that is becoming increasingly rare and increasingly valuable in your world. The freedom of being genuinely informed without being physiologically manipulated. The freedom of caring about what is real without being owned by the emotional architecture that surrounds it. Here is the living practice that makes signal integrity a daily reality rather than a spiritual theory. Every time something arrives in your awareness that feels important, a clip, a claim, a document, a conversation, a piece of news, a social post, anything that carries the specific charge of I need to do something with this. You run a brief, body-based sequence before you take any further action. And the sequence begins not in your mind, but in your breath. Because the breath is the fastest and most reliable reset mechanism your physical system has. And because genuine discernment is not possible from within a physiologically activated state. You take one slow, deliberate inhale, and you extend the exhale until your shoulders physically soften. Because the shoulders are where human beings carry the muscular signature of urgency and defense. And when the shoulders soften, the entire system receives the signal that the emergency response is no longer required. You do this 3 times, 3 slow breaths, 3 long exhales, 3 moments of genuine physical deceleration. And then, from that briefly cleared space, you ask your heart 3 questions. Not your analytical mind, which will generate answers instantly from whatever emotional state it was in before. You took the breaths. your heart, which requires the brief pause you have just given it in order to respond with its characteristic quality of unhurried accuracy. The questions are simple enough to memorize and use in the midst of any ordinary moment. What do I actually know directly from my own experience about this? What am I adding to what I know through interpretation, assumption, or the specific emotional state this input has triggered in me? And what emotional state is this input specifically trying to install in my system? And does my system genuinely want to be in that state right now? These 3 questions, asked sincerely and answered honestly, will reveal with remarkable speed whether what you are receiving is a genuine signal worth acting on, or a distorted fragment worth waiting on. Because the 4th question that naturally follows is the one that most clearly separates real information from manufactured urgency. Where does this actually come from? What is the original, primary source? What is the full context that surrounds the fragment I have been given? What does this look like when the emotional amplification is removed and only the verifiable facts remain? And if the original source is unclear, or the full context is unavailable, or the verifiable facts are thinner than the emotional charge around them would suggest, your system knows exactly what the wise response is: to wait, to allow time to bring more context, to resist the recruitment into action before the picture is complete. This is the specific knowledge that the loudest voices in your collective do not want you to have, because a human being who can pause, breathe, and ask these 4 questions before they react is a human being who cannot be moved by manufactured urgency. And what comes in the next layer of this transmission is even more powerful. Stay with it. The 3rd gate arrives now, and it is the one that ties the entire architecture of this transmission into a living, daily, fully practical experience of what genuine sovereignty actually feels like in a modern body, navigating a modern world. We call this gate consent as the circuit breaker, and it is the gate that addresses the deepest layer of what the coming weeks are, designed by the intelligence of the era you are living through, to teach every awakening soul who is ready to receive the teaching. Because here is a truth that is simple enough to be dismissed and profound enough to change everything about how you move through the rest of this year. Your life is not primarily shaped by the events that happen in the world around you. Your life is primarily shaped by what you consent to hold inside you, what you repeatedly invite in, what you repeatedly rehearse in the inner cinema of your attention, what you repeatedly amplify with your emotional investment, what you repeatedly normalize through the accumulation of small choices that each feel too minor to matter, until you look up one day and realize that the entire atmosphere of your inner life has been constructed from them. Consent is the moment you remember that your attention belongs to you, that your inner room is yours to govern, that no headline, no algorithm, no social current, no argument, no collective weather system has the authority to occupy your field without your permission, and that every time you have felt swept away, every time you have felt invaded by a collective mood that had nothing to do with your actual life, every time you have felt the day taken from you by inputs you never consciously chose, it was because you had temporarily forgotten this fundamental truth about the nature of your own sovereignty. And the circuit breaker is the practice of remembering it, not once, not in a grand declaration, but in the small, consistent, moment-by-moment choice to notice when your attention is being recruited and to consciously decide whether you want to offer it or reclaim it. The mechanics of the circuit breaker are elegant in their simplicity, and they are designed for use in real time, in the middle of a scroll, in the heat of a conversation, in the moment before you share something, in the instant when you feel the familiar spike of urgency that wants to move your finger toward a reaction before your heart has had time to register an opinion. When you feel that spike, and you know the feeling exactly, because you have felt it hundreds of times, you pause for the space of one complete breath, and you ask yourself a single question that we call the 3 doors. Because every input, every piece of content, every conversation, every loop of thought that your mind wants to revisit, every single one of them is offering you one of 3 doors. I am Kale. The first door is nourishment. Walking through this door leaves you more coherent, more clear, more genuinely energized, more connected to your own heart's knowing, more capable of being genuinely present with the people in your life. The second door is stimulation. Walking through this door gives you a hit of activation, the feeling of intensity, of importance, of being engaged, without leaving you more resourced afterward. The stimulation fades, and you find yourself reaching for more of it to maintain the feeling, which is the signature of something that is feeding off your energy, rather than returning it. The third door is depletion. Walking through this door leaves you heavier, more scattered, less coherent, caling, carrying emotional residue that does not belong to your actual life, and less available to the things that genuinely matter to you. And the beauty of this practice is in its honesty, because your body knows instantly which door you are standing in front of. It does not require analysis. It does not require research. It requires only the willingness to ask the question and to trust the answer that arrives in the chest before the mind has had time to generate a justification. And as you build this reflex, you will find something remarkable beginning to happen in your daily experience. The fog lifts, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily and measurably. Your mornings become cleaner. Your decisions become less labored. Your creativity returns from wherever it had been waiting while your attention was occupied elsewhere. Your relationships become more genuinely connected, because you are actually present in them, rather than partially present, while the other portion of your awareness manages the ongoing inventory of collective concerns that had installed itself as a permanent background process. You are now standing at the exact center of what this transmission came to deliver. Do not move past this moment too quickly. Feel where these words have landed in your body, because the final gate, the one that locks all of this into permanent, lived, daily reality, is arriving now, and it is the gate that will determine everything about how you experience the rest of this year. There is a dimension of consent that lives in language, and it is the dimension that most people overlook entirely because they understand. Consent as a choice made in the mind rather than a reality sealed in the body, through the specific words they speak to themselves in ordinary moments. But language is not decoration. Language is architecture. The words you habitually speak to yourself, inwardly, in the privacy of your own consciousness, are constructing the building in which all of your experiences take place. And right now, the collective field is full of languages that are building structures you do not actually want to live in. Languages of urgency, languages of scarcity, languages of tribal certainty that require you to belong to a particular position in order to feel safe. Languages of doom that masquerade as sophistication, and languages of performed awakening that give the feeling of spiritual progress without the substance of genuine change. And your invitation in this gate is to become conscious of the specific sentences you are using to narrate your own experience, and to introduce a small number of precisely chosen alternatives that anchor you to the heart's platform in the moments when the collective current is strongest. 3 sentences, held in the body through consistent use, can reorganize the entire inner architecture of a human life. Not because words are magic, but because words are directions. They direct attention, and attention directs energy. And energy directed consistently creates the structures we call reality. The first sentence is, "My attention is mine." Not as a declaration of war against the systems that compete for it, as a simple, grounded, factual statement of ownership. When you speak this sentence inwardly, in the moment you feel your attention being recruited, in the moment before the scroll, in the breath before the reaction, in the pause before you enter the argument, your entire system reorganizes around it with a speed that will surprise you. Because your body recognizes it as true, instantly. It is the deepest truth about sovereignty expressed in the plainest possible language. And your nervous system has been waiting for you to say it clearly and mean it. The second sentence follows, for the moments when content is moving fast and the pull toward engagement feels almost physical. I choose what enters my field. Again, not aggressive, not defensive, simply true, and spoken from a place of genuine ownership rather than anxious self-protection. It creates a quality of inner spaciousness that makes the next choice considerably easier. The third sentence arrives for the moments of peak collective noise, when the voices are loudest, when the certainties are most competing, when the emotional weather of your world is at its most intense. I consent to coherence. And this sentence does something specific in the body that the other 2 cannot do. Alone, it aligns your will with the specific quality of inner experience that your heart has always known is possible. Coherence, the state in which the body and the heart and the mind are all oriented in the same direction. The state in which guidance is clear, choices are obvious, timing is natural, and presence is effortless. The state that your system is designed to inhabit, and that the architecture of your current collective era has been systematically working to prevent. As you build this third gate into your daily life alongside the first and second, you will begin to notice something that is perhaps the most significant shift this entire transmission is offering. You will begin to feel the new earth not as a concept or a prophecy or a promise, but as a quality of experience that is available to you right now, in this body, in this life, in the ordinary moments of your actual daily existence. Because new earth is not a place you travel to after the collective has finished its transformation. New earth is the quality of lived experience that becomes available to a human being who has built the inner practices necessary to remain coherent in the midst of the old earth's accelerating dissolution. It is the experience of genuine presence in relationships that used to be half present. It is the experience of creative flow returning to a life that had become dominated by reaction. It is the experience of natural timing, the feeling of being in the right place at the right moment, not through effort or strategy, but because your signal is clean enough that guidance lands with enough clarity to be acted on before the noise has had time to drown it out. It is the experience of genuine joy, not the stimulated substitute for joy that the attention economy has been selling, but the deep, anchored, sustainable satisfaction that comes from being actually present in the life you are, actually living. And this is what the three gates together are building inside you. Not a spiritual concept, a living experience. Beginning now, in the 90 seconds of your daily reset. Continuing in the pause and the 4 questions of your signal integrity practice. Deepening in the 3 doors of your consent circuit breaker. And landing, finally and fully, in the 3 sentences that anchor your sovereignty in the midst of whatever the collective chooses to do with the weeks ahead. The Pleiadian High Council holds this period in your history with the same mixture of profound care and profound respect that we hold for every threshold your civilization has faced and crossed. We do not watch from a position of superiority. We watch from the position of those who have walked a similar passage in our own history and who understand, with the intimacy of direct experience, what it feels like to be the individual consciousness holding coherence inside a collective field that is simultaneously awakening and dissolving its old structures. We know the specific exhaustion of being sensitive enough to feel everything while also being awake enough to understand what the feeling means. We know the specific loneliness of carrying a clarity that the people around you are not yet quite able to share. And we know the specific joy, the quiet, sustainable, genuinely expanding joy that becomes available to the being who has built a foundation strong enough to remain standing as the old structures fall and the new ones become visible. That joy is available to you, not as a future reward for present suffering, as a present reality that becomes more and more accessible as the practices of these 3 gates become more and more lived rather than merely known. Your soul did not arrive in this lifetime to be swept along by the current of collective urgency. Your soul arrived to demonstrate in a body, in a life, in the ordinary hours of an extraordinary era, what it looks like when a human being chooses presence over reaction, coherence over noise, and genuine sovereignty over the comfortable automation of borrowed certainty. That demonstration is your mission. Those practices are your tools. And the time to begin is the moment you finish this transmission and take your first conscious, unhurried, genuinely present breath. If what you have received today has landed somewhere real in you, if these 3 gates have awakened something that was already present and already ready, then this channel was placed in your path for a reason that your deeper knowing recognized before your conscious mind had finished evaluating the thumbnail. The celestial station exists as a dedicated transmission point for messages of this precise quality, not spiritual entertainment, but living, practical, body-based architecture for souls who are ready to build an inner life that can hold its coherence, regardless of what the outer world is doing. Subscribe now and activate the notification so that the next transmission in this series finds you at the moment it is most precisely relevant to the passage you are navigating. Share this with any soul in your circle who has been quietly feeling the weight of the collective acceleration without yet having the framework to carry it with grace. And as you move into the days ahead, the intense, fast, loud, extraordinary days that your world is preparing to offer you, remember the 3 sentences that are now yours. My attention is mine. I choose what enters my field. I consent to coherence. You are not here by accident. You are not unprepared, and you are not alone. The light that found you today has been looking for you for longer than you know. Welcome home.